Sleeping day today?
Yeah!
Nice. Alright, real talk. Was it good or did it just make you more tired? Alright, Miss Ouija says good, so that means that it was good for him, I guess. Alright, so raise your hands. How many of you guys love being at camp? Wish you could never go home. No, just kidding. But how many of you love camp? Awesome, you can put them down. Me too, I love camp, you guys. I really love it. I love when we have the younger kids here doing the staff hunt and hearing some 200 kids run out of the chapel screaming at the top of their freaking lungs as I'm like quivering in my hiding spot because I know I'm about to get thrown in the lake. I love playing Mighty Mighty with you guys, going as hard as I can and arguing with Danny about whether or not he got me out or not. He didn't, just for the record. Just kidding. I don't know. Anyway, I love going to chapel, singing songs of praise with you guys and with our sisters in Christ to our Creator God, and then hearing speakers every week like Mark come up and tell us all a little bit more about Jesus and the love He has for us. I love camp, you guys. It's a really, really cool place. But just like every other thing on this world, it is not perfect. It has flaws. And unfortunately, there are things that I don't like about camp. The thing that I really don't like about camp is that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it leaves a door open. It leaves this door open for you guys to come here and have this crazy, awesome week and get filled up with Christ's love and get your spiritual high, and then go home and it just doesn't really do anything. You leave it at camp. You know, you come here and you have your week, you learn about Jesus, and then it just kind of tapers off later. And what I hate to see, and this might sound a little backwards at first, so please hear me out, but what I hate to see is when somebody comes here and they have this crazy, life-changing week and make this radical decision for Jesus that they're going to follow Him, and then they come back next year and they do it again. And they come back the year after that and do it again, and then again and again, because ultimately it had no effect on their life once they left camp. You know, maybe they stuck with it for a few days, but then it just tapered off and it had no effect on their life. And the reason that I hate this and I hate to see it is because as I'm reading the scriptures, as I'm reading the Gospels and seeing Jesus' teachings, never once do I see Him demand of us a one-time decision. Never once do I see Him tell us just to decide to follow Him, and then that's it. But instead, as I read the Bible, I see Him over and over and over again tell us and command us to follow Him and to be His disciples. And that's not just a one-time thing, that's an everyday kind of thing. And as I'm reading and I'm learning more about discipleship, there's two things that I want to share with you guys today that I do not think get talked about enough about discipleship. And that is that one, discipleship costs everything. It costs all you got. And then two, it demands change. It's a process that demands you guys to live differently. And I'll dive into these points. When I was in the 4th grade, my cousin Jackson, if you don't know, that is my cousin back there. That's why we kind of look alike. Some people say we do, some people say we don't. That's up for you to decide. But when I was in the 4th grade, we were both in the 4th grade, he announced to our entire family that he was not going to drink pop for a whole year. So I called him up. Yeah, I know some of you are looking at him like, what? I called him up, being the loving cousin that I am. And I said, hey, buddy, so what dropped on your head? who hurt you? Why are you not drinking pop for a whole year? How could you possibly do that? And he explained to me very lovingly that Grandma was going to give him $70 if he didn't drink pop for a whole year. And as a fourth grader, that's a lot of money, right? Because you don't have an allowance. If you're lucky and you do, it's maybe like, what, $2 or $3 a week? You can't get a job because of those stinking child labor laws. No, just kidding. But $70 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, you look great today." She looked at me and said, "What do you want?" I said, "Nothing. Just one small thing. Can I have $70 if I don't drink pop for a year?" And so we struck up this bargain, and we, after minutes, if not seconds of hard, stern negotiating, she decided she would give me $60 if I didn't drink pop for a whole year. And that was a ripoff. So I went to Grandma, and she was happy to give me the rest of the 10 to get to 70. Now, I think she was more happy that she didn't have to give up another 70, but, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. The point is that I had this deal, if I didn't drink pop for a whole year, I would get $70. But that was a big sacrifice, you guys, because I love pop. How many of you love pop? Yeah, I love pop. I'll give you a reference point. Last year, January 2017, my New Year's resolution was to cut down to 1 Mountain Dew a day. And I'm not joking, you guys. I'm not exaggerating when I say I probably cut my pop intake in half. I drink a lot of pop. And so this was a big, big sacrifice. It meant that while my family was at Burger King, well, I was with them, but while we were at Burger King on a Friday night, and my family was drinking their favorite soft drink, I had to wait until we drove home so I could drink tap water. And it meant that when I would go to a friend's birthday party and they were chugging down cans of whatever you can imagine. What are some of your guys' favorite pop?
Cherry Coke.
I heard Diet Coke. That's a little weird. Dr. Pepper, Fanta, Cherry Coke, Mountain Dew. Anyway, all right, bring it back. Anyway, while they were guzzling down all these, draining 24 packs of these, I had to go to my friend's mom and say "Hey, can I get a glass of water?" And she'd be like, "I guess." When we would go to the Twins game, we went to a Twins game every year, and we got our Dome Dogs. Are any of you old enough to remember Dome Dogs? Yes, they're the best hot dogs in the world. And my family had these giant, 62-ounce souvenir cups that you could fit a small dog into, full of pop, and it had Tory Hunter's face over it. You could take it home. They were guzzling down those, and I had this dusty old Aquafina bottle full of water because they were afraid I was gonna shoot the cap off at somebody and get myself beat up. It cost a lot, you guys. It cost a lot to not drink pop that year, but I got my prize. I got what I was going for. And Jesus, when talking about the cost of discipleship, says a similar thing. Now, he's talking about a lot more than pop. He says you have to give up everything. He says in verse 33 of Luke chapter 14 that in the same way, if any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. If you don't give up everything you have, you can't be my disciple. And he's talking again a lot more than pop. Just a few verses earlier in that same passage, verse 26, he's talking to this large crowd that is following him. And he says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and his mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Now I'm pause real quick. Pretty sure that Jesus is not saying literally hate your family. I don't want to hear that any of you went home after hearing this and keyed your mom's van or threw your sister's hamster in the toilet. Please don't do that, okay? You will not have the excuse of the speaker told me I could, all right? You're not allowed to do that because that goes against everything else in Scripture. But what Jesus is saying, he's saying that if you don't love me so much that you hate your family in comparison, if you don't revere me so highly and place me so important in your life, that in comparison you hate your family and even your own life, then you're not giving up enough to be my disciple. Meaning your family, and yes, even yourself, should mean so little compared to how much Jesus means that it seems like you hate them. Alright? This is the cost of discipleship. It is everything. In a similar way, Matthew 13:44, Jesus is talking again. He's talking in parables, and he says, "The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought the field." He sold all that he had. And what I think gets lost about that, you guys, and brings me to the second point, is that when you sell everything you have, when you give up everything you have, it's not just like you put it in a bundle on Amazon and somebody buys it and then boom, all of a sudden you don't own anything. No, it's this process. If you were to sell everything you have, you would need to hold like a garage sale or a yard sale, and you would need to take each individual item that you own and put a price on it and watch them go one by one by one. And it would be pretty easy to give up some things. It would be easy to give up those Sports Illustrated magazines in the attic that you haven't looked at for 5+ years. It might be easy to see, the local neighbor walk off with a pile of those. But it'd be a lot harder if you were selling everything you had and you had to watch that teddy bear go that you've had your whole life and got you through countless nightmares. Or take it a step further, if it was the glove that your dad bought you when you were like 5 years old and taught you how to play catch with. Or the letter that your mom wrote to you on your graduation night that you still look at 2 years later and cry over. It's a lot harder to give up these things because they're near and dear to us. They have significance and meaning to us. But if we see in the parable that when the man found the field, found the treasure, he sold all that he had. And Jesus is saying in a similar way, we are to give him everything we have. And in a similar way, it's easy to give up some things. I'll give you guys an example. It's pretty easy for me personally to give up smoking crystal meth for Jesus. Right? I mean, I don't even hardly know what it looks like. I've never touched it or seen it in real life. I don't know where you would even get meth. So it's not hard for me to not do meth because I've never had any draw to do it. It's not hard for me to say, Jesus, because I love you and want to follow you, I'm not going to do meth. Because I wouldn't have done it anyway. Like every person I've ever heard of that does meth either goes to jail for a really long time or dies. Right? I don't want to do that. It wasn't hard for me to give that up. But it was hard just about a year ago when I had a girlfriend that I 100% thought I was going to marry. There was not a scenario in my mind where we didn't end up together. But it became clear over a painstaking couple months that this relationship was not a healthy one, and it was distracting both of us from our purpose of following Jesus. We were tearing each other down. It was not a relationship that was honoring to Christ. And so even though it was something that had significance to me, that was very near and dear to my heart, I had to give it up because Jesus demands everything. And it's a process that requires us changing for him. It was a lot harder to give that up. But like I said, it's a long process that requires change. And James, in his book, talks about this. In chapter 2, verses 14 through 17, I want you listening real close. He says, "What good is it, my brothers, if a man claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such a faith save him? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If any one of you says to him, 'Go, I wish you well, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about his physical needs, then what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by actions, is dead." Now, if you've never heard that before or never really studied it, you might be thinking, wait, I thought Jackson said that, it is by grace through faith that we're saved. That's nothing that we can do. I thought this whole point was that Jesus came down and died for our sins so that we could live with him. That is nothing we can actually do. It's not by our actions. And guys, that is still 100% right. I'm not taking that away. James right here when he's writing is not trying to argue against that. But instead what he's saying is that if you really mean it, if you are really following Jesus, like if it's something that you truly believe in your heart, if you really love him, then your life should look different because of that. I'll give you guys an illustration or an example. I would claim to love both the sports, basketball and hockey. I would say, I love basketball or I love hockey. But there is a radical difference in the meaning of the word love between those two sports. Because hockey, I think, is a cool sport, but I have never played a game of hockey in my life other than like Fayed when they made you, or maybe broomball if the whole youth group was doing it. Okay, I've watched maybe 5 games of hockey total in my life. I don't have any jerseys. The only player I could name is Wayne Gretzky. I don't have any cards or anything. Like, if hockey were to stop existing tomorrow, my life would pretty much look the same. Like, pretty much look the same. Basketball, on the other hand, I live and breathe. It is very evident after knowing me for about 25 minutes that I love basketball. If you were to go to my house, you would see a tub of shoes filled to the brim. That is my Facebook profile picture. I'm not joking. Thank you for bringing that up. That is awesome. I love basketball. Right? If you would have gone to my church gym when I was in high school while my friends were out partying on Friday nights, you would have seen me putting up shot after shot after shot after shot because I wanted to get better, because I loved the game. And it meant that much to me. If basketball were to stop existing tomorrow, I would be fine because I have Jesus, but honestly, I don't know what I would do. My life would look very, very, very different all of a sudden. Okay? Hockey, I'm kind of in love with an idea of. Basketball, I have a true passion and love for it, and it shows. And James, when he's talking about Jesus, is saying the same thing. That when we decide to follow Jesus, it demands change, it should motivate change, and you better look different. If you've decided to follow Jesus this week at camp, when you go home, it should look different. And that doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to be perfect. It's not like you're going to go home and little Joey is going to tell you some inappropriate joke that you normally would laugh at, but this time you're going to be like, "That's the devil talking. Get behind me, Satan." My guess is you're still going to laugh at it. You're still going to be imperfect. You're still going to be sinful. But your heart should look different. Your life should look different. Your reason for living is different. Because before, when you were following your own desires, whether it was sports or girls or popularity or sneakers or happiness or whatever, music, whatever it could possibly be that you're chasing, you're following and putting your identity in, instead of following that, you're now following Jesus and what he says is right for you, what he wants for you. Those are two different paths. And though these aren't necessarily bad things, it looks very different when you decide to follow Jesus instead of those. Okay? That's what James is saying. He's saying that it should motivate change and it should be very evident. So what I want you guys to do right now is I want you to examine yourself. Because I'm sure some of you have made decisions for Jesus this week, and that is awesome. I love that. Please don't hear this message and think that I don't want you to make that decision. Some of you have maybe been following Jesus your whole life. Some of you maybe have not made that decision to follow Christ. I don't know. I don't know your story. But what I want you to do is, regardless of where you stand on that scale, I want you to examine yourselves right now and think to yourselves, is this legit? Is this something that I mean when I say this? Or is this something that if I decide to follow Jesus, that it's going to mean something when I do this? Is this something that I'm willing to do every day for the rest of my life, whether it's easy or hard? Or is this something that I'm just in love with the idea of? Is this hockey to lose? I want you guys to examine yourselves. And if this is something that you legitimately mean, that you really truly want to follow Jesus with all you have, thick and thin, good and bad, for the rest of your life, then what we're going to do is we're going to do our man pledge. Alright? We've done it all week. And we've told you guys time and time again that we don't want to force you to, and we meant that when we said that. But I also know that if every person around me stands, I'm also going to stand whether I mean it or not, probably. Like, it's a thing that we do as humans, we're imperfect. But what I want you to do is, if you truly mean that you want to follow Jesus with all you have, then I want you to stand up. We're going to loudly proclaim as men, as loud as we can, this man pledge. All right? So, 2 Peter 1, 5 and 7. For this very reason, I, pledge to make every effort to supplement my faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. Awesome. Thank you guys. You can take a seat. And what I hope you know, what I hope you've gathered this week, gathered even this talk, is that there's a third thing that I didn't tell you. And that it's completely worth it. It costs everything. It demands change. But it is completely worth it. That we would spit in Jesus' face, and he would still love us so much that though we're not good enough to kiss the ground that he spits on, he would still come down and die for our sins and give us this opportunity to walk in life with him, to walk in discipleship. And that he would demand everything from that, but that we would be gaining eternal things with him instead. I hope you guys know that. I want you to think on that and meditate on that as we go. So I'm going to close in prayer, and then counselors, there's discussion questions up here on the TV stand thing. Dear Lord, I thank you for each and every one of these young men, that they have been brought here by you through whatever circumstances, that they would hear more about you today and this week and tomorrow, that they would get poured into with your love, God, and that they would do something with that they would be touched by you and your presence and your love, and that it would have an effect on their life, and that they would choose to follow you legitimately, meaning God. I pray all these things in your holy name. And all God's people said, Amen. All right, thank you.